Hello and welcome back to Athlantic, the show where an American and a Brit take turns crossing the pond to learn about sports culture in the UK and the USA. I am your resident Brit, Harry.
And I am your resident American, Adam. Harry, how's it going?
It's good. I'm very, very excited about this episode. What we're going to talk about is really exciting and something that I've only just found like on my own, which I know is a big part of your like sporting life. Yeah, we've had a very interesting week on and off the field for football this week, and it's hard to stay like optimistic and exciting and ready for like the Christmas spirit when you know the morals of the sport you love are so heavily corrupted twice in a week. But hey, enough about me, Adam. How are you doing?
So wait, enough about you. So you're the one doing the corrupting. You're the
yes. I am all four parties. Yeah.
Good to know. I'm doing well. I feel like every single episode we come on here and talk about how busy the sports calendar is, how busy both of us are. I mean, it's that time of year. It's an exciting time. And yeah, I'm doing well. I am also very excited about today's episode. For a lot of reasons. I can't wait to get into everything. So without further ado, I know we do also again this week have to touch on some news that you just previewed right there. So take it away, Harry.
Sure. So in football we've had two little, what calling them missteps is way too kind. Calling them disasters is a little bit too heavy-footed for the podcast. But about a week ago, just before the weekend, the World Cup bid for 2034 was awarded to Saudi Arabia, despite huge protests across the entire world, despite the massive negative backlash to the Qatari World Cup that we had a couple of years ago, and the fact that the 2030 World Cup is breaking norms and is being hosted over three different continents. Everyone thought that FIFA had turned a page, but it just flipped that page straight back, and it's really frustrating, even in the sports replays that we've done over the last 10 weeks, to see continued sport washing by a certain select countries and collection of countries, but yeah, it's just another blow. It has huge ramifications for the athletes, spectators, the international view of Saudi Arabia. I mean, that is effectively what sport washing is. And yeah, it's incredibly disappointing. We think it's a pretty disgusting decision. Is this making as much of a splash in the US?
I mean, not particularly. I mean, the World Cup isn't as. The World Cup obviously has historically not been as big of a deal here in the U.S., at least on the men's side. And so there's that. Also, just the timing of it. There's so much else happening in the sports world that it's just not. I don't think it's broken through very much, except for with people who are fans of the sport. So, it just follows a general theme of what feels like over the past few years of just the worst people getting rewarded for
somehow
their behavior, and it's very annoying. So
yeah,
yeah.
For anyone that doesn't know, obviously this has been pieced out so many times, and there are far better people. There are some incredible journalists that will put this far better and far more concisely than we can. But obviously, in Saudi Arabia, they do not have freedom of speech. There is a colossal gender inequality. There is suppression of LGBTQA plus communities. Even though they promise that everyone will be welcome at the games, the same promise was made for Qatar, and on multiple instances, like rainbow flags were confiscated. Certain people were ejected from games and from fan zones for even appearing to adhere to minority group or one of those communities that is suppressed in the rest of the country. And of course, as you know, we see more and more, Saudi Arabia has managed to buy this bid, has pledged loads of money to the global game, to FIFA, who will also, let's remember, FIFA only make money once every 4 years, and it's at the World Cup. FIFA will make a colossal amount of money on this. And in 10 years after that, in the 2040s, there will be a generation of people that remember Saudi Arabia, regardless of how human rights change in Saudi Arabia. They will remember Saudi Arabia, and one of the first things that come to their head will be the World Cup, um, Newcastle Football Club, Live Golf,
Formula One.
that and Formula One. Yeah, we're both big Formula One fans. We can't even pretend like it's not it's a massive problem. And to be fair, Formula One has been a battleground for sport washing for far longer than Saudi Arabia getting into it. It's not a new problem. Annoyingly, it is still a problem, and we hoped that a page had been turned, and it hasn't been.
Yeah, it's disappointing. Just is the word that keeps coming to mind. And it's another thing that the attention will be turned away from it for a while, and then it'll come back, I'm sure, once the competition is on, and then it goes away again. But so there, it's unfortunate, and hopefully we can get to a place too, and aside from not to diminish it, but we talk about the human rights issues, and we talk about all of the political, I don't even want to say political, but just moral issues at play here. There's also just the fact that for sports in general, having everything cost this much money to put on. Having everything, you have to throw Saudi level money to field a competitive team or to host a great event. The fact that you have to do that to succeed in the sports world in a lot of ways now, it's just, it's not healthy for sports as is. So
No.
there's a lot of different aspects to this.
And the last thing I'll say is, and this is something unbelievably, I've seen people coming to like the defense of the Saudi bid, and unfortunately, a lot of different sports federations, football federations around the world, like the FA in England, have approved this bid, and sort of FIFA have tied their own hands together, because there is a rule that each sequential World Cup has to be hosted in a different continent, like the Olympics. However, as I mentioned, the 2030 World Cup will be hosted in South America, Europe, and Africa, which means there are, I don't know how your math stacks up, there are only 3 continents left. Australasia can't host, don't have the infrastructure, although I back them to be able to probably put it together in the next.
Yeah, I mean, Australia backed out. Australia backed out of their bid. I mean, they initially, this was down to one finalist, and it was Saudi Arabia, because Australia just bowed out because.
Exactly. Australia just hosted the Women's World Cup. I think they can definitely do it. Obviously, the US would be completely overlooked because you're hosting the next World Cup. And then let's not pretend that Asia isn't the biggest. The biggest continent on the planet, and there are so many other more deserving places where bringing the world's biggest football competition would be an enormous benefit, even though obviously it costs a lot of money to put on. How wonderful would it be to relive like 2002 in Japan, or like Southeast Asia? That would be really fun. Now, the other bit of
I'm just glad.
Go on.
Sorry, I was just gonna say I'm just glad that we covered every bit of nuance in less than 10 minutes, and we didn't leave a thing out.
Yeah, exactly. And please go and read something else. Don't just listen to us. The other unfortunate bit of sports as football news is that the Super League is back. Anyone that's been paying attention sort of knew that it was going to come back. Whether or not it's going to be this fast is different. However, we're not going to talk about that here. We're going to post an overtime episode. You'll be able to find that on the TikTok, and we'll also make sure it gets onto our new YouTube Shorts, which is very exciting. Which Adam launched for us this week, where you'll either be watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify. All of our short form content, like our weekend replays and our overtime episodes, are now going to end up on YouTube Shorts as well. I say that for the benefit of the Americans who will lose TikTok in about a month, right?
Yeah, I mean, exactly 1 month from when we're recording this. Now, who knows? The courts are Supreme Court's taking it up now, so who knows? But just
Sure.
in case, and also we'd love to see you on every platform. So today's main topic is ice hockey. I am very excited about this. Ice hockey is one of my absolute favorite sports in the entire world. I love to watch it at all levels of the game. And it's funny, I keep finding myself saying ice hockey and hearing you refer to it as ice hockey. I think here everybody just thinks of it as hockey because people don't
Sure.
think of any other kind of hockey. Field hockey is
Uh-huh.
a, a big thing in very specific parts of the country here, the Northeast
Sure.
being big, and also right here in North Carolina because the University of North Carolina has the best field hockey program in the country, even though we didn't make the championship game this year, but we won't talk about that. Anyway, so when I think of hockey, and when most Americans and certainly most Canadians think of hockey, we think of ice hockey. Is that different over there? Field hockey, like ice hockey, doesn't seem to be as big of a thing.
Um, Ice hockey's not as big of a thing. I would say ice hockey of the big, what I think of the big American sports, ice hockey is the least visible in the UK. Obviously, NFL, MLB are both played. Regular season games are played in London, so they're very accessible, and also they're on like a lot of our TV channels anyway. The NBA is huge, even though that hasn't made the same jump to Europe physically. But ice hockey, I cannot find it on any channel. I've got to go online. I've got to pay for it, or I've got to find some dodgy back end stream. So it's got a very very low visibility. However, when we say hockey, yes, until I really got to know you, I would always think of field hockey, a sport that we learn a lot in our schools. I've played field hockey. I'm horrible at it, and it's very scary. It's soccer with sticks and a small, like cricket ball.
Yeah.
And also, we don't have as strong of an infrastructure for like ice rinks and things. Our winter sports program, despite being a nasty little cold, wet country in the North Atlantic, our winter sports programs aren't very good, and our accessibility to ice hockey is pretty poor. So,
Yeah.
so I go on.
Oh no, I was just saying that's incredible. That's really surprising to me just because of the geography of it. Being right basically on the North Sea, you've got some countries around you that ice hockey is a huge thing, and they have a very very rich history. Sweden, Norway a little bit less so, but still certainly a rich tradition. Sweden has a huge tradition of it. Finland, you know all those types of countries. I mean, even Denmark to a lesser extent, but especially the Nordic countries have such a rich tradition of it. And obviously, there's a lot of big cultural differences between the UK
Sure.
and those Nordic countries, to say the least. But yeah, that's definitely surprising to me. There's like I said, I could go into all the history of it, but I'm not, I don't want to bore people too much. But separate from kind of its Canadian roots, there's a parallel history in Europe of hockey,
Wow.
ice hockey. I'm gonna just start referring to it as hockey for everybody going forward because I just can't
That's fine.
keep switching it in my head. So
Sure.
hockey has a huge presence in Europe. Also, not to mention Russia, as I talked about. Although Russia has faded from the international stage in just about every sport, given everything happening with that country. But anyway, I digress. I am interested in your experience with hockey because
Sure.
before we kind of get into some of the other structured things we have in this, you recently attended your very first hockey game in the UK, and I want to hear more about this. I want this to help set the stage for our conversation.
I attended my very first ice hockey game exactly a month ago. Um, and how it came about, I work in Southwest London, and somebody that I work with asked me what I was doing in the evening, and I blew them off with some line about seeing my friends, and they said, "Oh, that's a shame. There's an ice hockey game going on this evening," and I was like, "Yeah, where?" Like in New York, and they're like, "No, it's like 2 minutes down the street in a part of London called Streatham." And I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing. Yeah, I had to like quickly backtrack and lots of egg on my face when I was very embarrassed, and suddenly they realized that I'm a massive American sports fan and desperately wanted to go. So yeah, I rallied a couple of friends and went to watch it, knowing obviously that this is after Athlantic had started, and we discussed hockey in passing, but it's the only sport that I didn't see when I lived in the US. I managed to get to collegiate or professional standards of all of the other big sports, and I know that you're such a massive fan. This. It seemed like a natural way to plug that intellectual blind spot I had. And Adam, it was amazing. It was so good. I remember texting you a big long list um, of questions and general observations, but yeah, what an exhilarating 2.5 hours watching hockey. And I really didn't know it was even in the UK. I didn't know there were like organized leagues. So yeah, we've done plenty of diving in on that, and yeah, oh, I loved it. It was so good. I feel bad that I didn't go with you, but yeah, it was amazing.
We'll change that one day. Maybe we'll go to a well. I've never been actually north of the border here. I desperately want to go to Canada. But one day we'll go to a Sens game. We'll go to see our friends in Ottawa.
Yes.
Yeah, we got to make that happen. But that's so I'm really glad that your first real experience going to a game or seeing a game was by going to a game, because it is so much easier to enjoy hockey, especially when you haven't watched it before, when you're
Uh-huh.
at the game. The television broadcast of it, just by nature of it, just doesn't do it justice. It's so much faster of a game than I think
Yes.
anybody gives it credit for, even at the level that you saw. Because I think looking at, I think it was like a second or third tier
Yes.
kind of minor team or minor league.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Strictly speaking, I think I watched like the third tier of hockey. But you're so right. My any preconception I had about even like how the game literally looks was all informed by watching like clips or like streams or broadcasts, and it's nothing like that. It was amazing. I
yeah.
was so in awe. I have such a like a refreshed and renewed respect for a sport I didn't even really have any time for before.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, and it's funny because you talked about it being kind of the major sports in the U.S., it being the fourth most popular over in Europe. Well, it's also the fourth most or over at least in the UK, but it's also the fourth most popular here in the U.S. And even in some ways soccer's depending on when you look at the numbers and what numbers you're looking at, soccer's actually more popular, which shocking that soccer is,
Sure.
is growing in popularity in the U.S. But yeah, it's funny because whenever I talk to people that haven't that never really experienced hockey that much, I've never really talked to many people who go watch their first hockey game and then are like, nah, I don't know, it's kind of boring, kind of
Yeah.
slow, not a huge fan. But yeah, I remember the biggest thing I remember from that list that you sent me was you talking about just how fast the game was, and also like I think you were talking about how these people were flying, and also just the hits and
Yes.
how these people are all over each other, and it's the perfect combination of speed, skill, and physicality that it's genuinely one of the more beautiful games. But
I
to get to the
I want to
basics of
say.
it, there's it's a pretty standard game like any. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I just want to say it's actually like elegant to watch. It's seeing what is like a tactically like challenging game take place while everyone is doing something as like elegant as skating. It's almost hypnotic. But no, please run us through like the basics. Fill me in. Here we go.
No, it totally. I mean, it is such an elegant game to watch. That's a really great way to put it. But yeah, I mean, it's the general objective is the same as field hockey, or the same as any stick and ball sport. In this case, stick and puck, because it's a little brown cylinder of or black cylinder of vulcanized rubber, that's going on the ice, and you're trying to whack it into a net. And you got a goalie to stop you. It's five aside plus the goalies on each end. The players substitute regularly at the professional levels of the sport. You're really only staying on the ice as a forward for 30 to 40, 45 seconds, and then you're changing, you're getting off the ice, letting the next person come on. It is
I
the reason for that. I can see your mind getting blown. The reason for that is the players just, it's such a fast physical game. You're going up, and I actually don't know what the rules are at that level of hockey that you're watching, but it's about an 80-foot by 200 foot. It's an 80-foot by 200-foot rink the NHL
yeah.
level. So you're covering a lot of ground when you're going end to end, and in international competition and a lot of and rinks over in Europe, the ice is even larger. So again, these players are the athletic ability on these players, of hockey players, I think is probably, just in terms of raw athleticism, arguably the most impressive of any sport, especially when you realize that they're doing it on ice with blades on the end of their feet.
So that was something that really blew me away, was how that short time that players were on before rotating out, and like not being pulled out by a coach, but like flagging and being like, "Hey, I'm coming off. One of you's got to be ready to get back on there." So yeah, that sort of that dynamism was crazy. How much time would a player be on the ice for across the whole game?
Across the whole game, it depends on the type of player. So a forward will play in the 20. So games are, for context, games are 60 minutes divided into three 20-minute periods. That's another thing that's unique about hockey, is you don't have there at one time at its very beginnings was split into two halves, and I don't remember the exact reasoning why, but at some point it became a 3-period game. So
Sure.
you have 3 periods. Usually, if you're a forward, you're gonna play in the your ice time is gonna be in the 20s, depending on if you're one of the better players on what they would call one of the top lines. So you're one of the players that's going out the most. Then you're gonna be playing for 25, 26, 27, 28 minutes per game.
Wow.
If you're a defenseman and you're one of the more reliable defensemen that are playing, that are on the ice a lot on one of the top pairings, because forward lines are made of 3 players, defensive pairings are made of 2. That's how you get to the 5-a-side.
Sure.
The defenseman will be out there. I mean, sometimes they're out there for almost 2/3 of the game. I've seen ice time where
Wow.
players get into the 40s, get into the low 40s. It's unreal for some of the top exceptional players that are that important to their team. Yeah, it's a great game. It's
No.
it's fascinating, kind of just breaking it down from that fundamental level. Go ahead.
Speaking of like the top exceptional players, what is incredible to me is that obviously in football you keep your best player on the pitch as long as they can go. Same with rugby. Slightly different in basketball where they also rotate a lot. In American football, they're like forced to rotate, depending on whether or not you have possession of the ball. So it was really amazing to see a couple of players that I could see at Streatham were really good. Sort of the team like loses their best like attacking output, and then they come back in and they all like spot him and they're like, oh, let's get it to whatever his name was. It's amazing to me that the one of the few things I know about hockey is that there's a huge difference between the really great players and then the only hockey player I could name before we met. It's amazing that you can have that delta in quality when they're not playing for half a game.
Yeah.
So is this an appropriate time to talk about maybe the most dominant athlete of all time?
Yeah, go for it. I assume you're talking about Tim Stutzla, the
Sidney
legend of
Crosby.
Ottawa.
Oh, the Ottawa
Sidney
one.
Crosby. Yeah, I mean Sidney
Um,
Crosby. I could gush about him all day. But yes, Wayne Gretzky, absolutely. I mean, it's funny. The GOAT debate in most sports is up for debate, or in a lot of sports, is yeah, you could at least argue it one way or the other. There's a lot of people, a lot of them being Penguins fans like myself, who like to make an argument that Mario Lemieux who's widely considered the second greatest player of all time, is in fact the greatest player of all time, but it's just not. Being objective, taking my penguin tinted glasses off, it's absolutely not even close. Wayne Gretzky, he is by far the most accomplished player of all time, the most dominant. But we can put that into context. So, to your point, the best players stand out quite a bit, and I think the best players back in his era stood out quite a bit. I mean, you look at the numbers now. He scored more than 2,800 points. So a point in hockey, heard me talk about how Stutzla this year has 37 points in 31 games.
sure.
A point in hockey, you get a point for a goal or an assist. They're equal. An
Oh, okay.
assist is the goal is obvious. If you're the last person to touch the puck before it goes into the net, you get a goal. Actually, unlike in soccer, actually, there's no own goals in hockey. So if you touch the puck, and then 5 minutes goes by, and somehow for some reason your team hasn't touched the puck since then, but
Yeah.
somebody on the opposite team puts it in their own net by accident, you get a goal. You can get a goal sitting on the bench. I'm dead serious.
Cool. Wicked.
It's rare, but it happens. So a goal is defined that way. An assist is defined by if you were one of the last two people to touch the puck before the goal scorer touched the puck, then you get an assist. So
Oh.
so you
Huh.
get a primary assist or a secondary assist. If you're the last person to touch it, primary, secondary assist for if you're the second to last person to touch it. So points is interesting. Anyway, I say all of that because Wayne Gretzky scored more than 2,800 points in his entire career. If you were to take away every single goal that he scored in the NHL, which was, I believe, 894, if you were to take away all of those goals, he would still be the all-time point leader in the NHL.
Jesus.
Think about that. If he
That's
didn't score a
dominant.
single goal, it's unbelievable. There's no other athlete really in any sport that I can think of at the highest level that has dominated like that. 894 goals, 1,963 assists. I was just pulling up the numbers. 2,857 points for his final total. That is an amount that will never be equaled. We're actually at a point where there's a Russian player named Alex Ovechkin who is getting very close to breaking the goal scoring record. And nobody else has come particularly close. Ovechkin will
Wow.
almost certainly get the record, but this is like even touching that 2,857 points is not even that's impossible to think of. Nobody else even has 2,000 points. Let's put it that way.
Um,
Yeah.
is the reason we're not getting close to Gretzky to do with like the evolution of the sport? Like
Yes.
when if we use Formula One for an example, we wanna talk about who's the greatest driver of all time. It's an impossible conversation. It's still fun,
Yeah.
but you can't compare a driver that drove in the 80s and missed the technological advances. It's not fair to put Senna in the same conversation as Schumacher, as the same conversation as Hamilton. Is that the
Totally.
same in ice hockey, or is it a bit more of a consistent playing field?
It's entirely the same in hockey. One
Right.
thing that I'll say is that we're actually in a golden age of the sport right now in terms of talent. You'll hear a lot of people around the sport say that, and I couldn't agree more. I think we've got more talent spread out across more teams than we've ever had. I think we have more skill, more talent than we've ever had. I think we're getting back to an age where you're seeing a lot more scoring. I mean, objectively, the numbers pan that out. Just over the past decade, scoring has gone up. Past 2 decades,
Wait,
scoring's up. But
wait,
when Wayne, go ahead. Yeah.
wait. You said scoring has gone up, and yet and yet we're still not seeing somebody touch Wayne Gretzky. Make
Correct.
how does that?
How do we
Obviously, you said
reconcile that?
you said the Russian players are getting close to the goal record, but won't touch like the total points record. Help me draw that line now.
I'm looking up. Let me pull this up. I should have had this up before. Apologies to for not having all the materials prepared for the big presentation at the end of year company meeting. But we I was just pulling up the NHL top point scorers list for reference for a little bit later. To your point, so we are at an era where scoring is up for the past 20 years or so. Scoring is not up from the era when Wayne Gretzky played. When Wayne Gretzky played, scoring was at its highest that it had ever been. And that's for a lot of reasons. The league had expanded. So if you go back and look, and this is across the board in sports, but if you go back and look at footage from yesterday to 2004 to 1994 to 1984 to 1964, they all look like completely different games. I actually just had
Sure.
some footage come across on my Instagram feed of a Toronto Maple Leafs game from 1967, and the game was almost completely unrecognizable. Not just in terms of the equipment and the style of play, but just how slowly the players are moving along the ice, how the
Wow.
tactics, the strategy, just completely different from what it is today. And again, that happens across sports. But in the
Sure.
1980s, we had the perfect mix of the players were there was a lot of discrepancy between the haves and the have-nots. The wealth gap, you could say, of the NHL was at its highest. There were a lot of newer teams in the league that didn't have nearly the resources. This was far before there was a salary cap. So the best teams could just buy the richest teams could just buy the best players and stack them all up on the same team. And objectively, goaltending was far worse than it was in the than it is now. Like not it's almost like you're not even watching the same position being played.
For our European and less educated listeners and viewers, goaltending is like goalkeeping, or is that just a general defense
Yes.
word? Okay,
Yes,
I feel like such
that's
an
well
idiot.
said. The person you should not because I'm sure there have been people from the beginning of the episode when I mentioned a goaltender and they're like, what? That's weird. What's
It
this
was me.
weird American saying it that way? Well, you can blame the Canadians. You can blame the Canadians. Really, I think they probably came up
Yeah.
with with the term goaltender. But yes, it's not a goalkeeper, and I think it sounds weird when you say goalkeeper for hockey. Just like it would sound weird if you said goaltender in soccer. It's just strange.
Sure.
I love those little quirks about language and sport, and we could get off on a whole tangent, but I won't. The goaltending was so much worse in the 1980s compared to what it is now. I won't get into the specifics of the techniques and the styles of goaltending, but like
Sure.
the technique that every single goaltender uses now hadn't been invented yet. Basically, the concept is you're on your knees now instead of standing up and trying to kick all the pucks away. You're on your knees, so
Okay.
you're more able to cover the bottom of the net and just kind of get things with your upper body. People hadn't figured out that that was the best way to do things yet. Equipment was far worse. If you watch, it's a joke. It's a little bit of a running joke in the hockey community that like Wayne Gretzky scored all these goals and scored all these points and was so dominant, but he never lifted the puck off the ice. He always just kind of slid it on the bottom, and like he was so dominant that A, that's not true. B, he was so dominant anyway, it doesn't matter even if it were. And C, like it's silly. There wasn't a C. But anyway, point is, scoring was way up in the 1980s when Wayne Gretzky got the most of his points for a lot of different reasons, and it probably will never get that way again. You're seeing a lot more younger players now, like Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews are probably the two biggest stars of our time right now. Connor McDavid is on pace to is on pace to I don't know exactly what his pace is, but he will be in the upper echelon, like top 10 players in terms of point scoring in his career. He may actually, if everything goes well and he stays healthy and everything, he could very easily become the third or second highest leading scorer of all time in the league.
So
Go ahead.
just you just said that so long as he stays healthy,
Yes.
he might break into those top couple. One of the two of the notes I sent to you, and I've got them still on my phone. Someone just came off for being naughty. And a bloke punched someone and then got sin binned for 5 minutes, which I think the only thing that other English fans might know is ice hockey gets quite violent at sometimes, but also is just like a naturally physical game. You mentioned that player needs to stay healthy. Is hockey inherently dangerous? Do people get injured a bunch? I mean, I know they must get injured.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And
absolutely. I mean,
so,
like you said, like there are straight up fights. Like people, even in leagues where fighting is banned, the NHL is a league where famously fighting is part of it. It's much rarer now than it used to be. But even when there isn't fighting allowed, like people will still rough each other up. People will still throw
sure.
punches here and there. It's not a league for the faint of heart. I mean, it's also so easy when you're going so quickly and you're
Right.
surrounded by boards that are made of very hard materials like hard plastics and metals and wood. Like it's easy to find yourself injured. It's easy to, because of literally the width of a metal blade, to be at just the wrong angle and have your ankle go the wrong way, or there'll be a little imperfection in the ice and you go in the wrong direction. Like there's little things that can happen that get people injured all the time. And again, you can physically check people. It's part of the game.
Yeah.
So yes, that is a huge thing. One of the biggest things, and this is where I will come back to the Penguins. Sidney Crosby, who is a Penguin, I am obviously a huge fan of, is generally among the hockey community now considered one of the top 5 players of all time. He currently,
Wow.
and again, and I keep using points as a proxy here. There are many ways that players can be excellent without scoring, record breaking amounts of points.
Sure.
But Sidney Crosby came up in an era where there was relatively less scoring, though he is currently playing still in a higher scoring era right now as his career has gone on. Sidney Crosby has scored 1,627 points as of today, the day that we're recording this. He has played only 1,305 games. So 1,600 points in 1,300 games. That's a lot. 1,300 games, he came in 1 year after um, 1 year after Alex Ovechkin, who's the Russian that's about to break the goal scoring
Oh,
record for
wow.
Wayne Gretzky. Sidney Crosby played 1,305 games. Alex Ovechkin has played more than 1,400, 1,444.
Wow.
So that's a lot more games. That's more than a season is 82 games long for
82.
reference. 82.
Um,
That's
and
because sorry,
is oh,
I
go
have to bulldoze over you real quick.
on.
That's
You're fine.
because Sidney Crosby, in the prime of his career, had a couple of big concussions that took him out for basically 2 years. Was that what you
Sure.
were about to ask about?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, why is he missing the games? Yeah, I mean that must be such an occupational hazard
Yeah,
for all of these lads, and must stunt the careers of some like really promising, like exciting players.
absolutely. I mean, there was a period of time where, during the worst of his concussions, people thought he wasn't going to play again, and this was, mind you,
Wow.
he was in his mid 20s when this happened. People thought he wasn't going to play again, or if he was going to play again, it wouldn't be the same. Sidney Crosby's story is amazing, but I don't want to make this the Sidney Crosby show. Yeah, he, or sorry. Anyway, so staying healthy is a big part of it. That's why I say like these people are on pace. Nothing is ever a sure thing in sport, but but especially in hockey. But safety, like I said, Crosby wasn't necessarily sure that he was ever going to play again. Safety can go beyond that too. It's not just like, oh, this person's going to miss out on records or miss out on the prime of their career. I mean, it is a sport where it has threatened and taken lives at points.
Sure.
Actually, probably if you're anybody in the UK, I don't know if this broke through for you, but I would probably think that most people in the UK's biggest exposure to hockey lately has been the story of Adam Johnson, who
Yeah.
I see you nodding your head. He he was a player who actually his only time in the NHL actually was with the Penguins. Funny enough, but he was a player that was playing in the top league in the UK just last year, and by a complete freak accident, because of the way that someone's body was angled when they fell down, a skate came up, hit him in the neck, and he bled out and died. It's a real thing. That's something
Sure.
that has happened in the NHL, people getting cuts on their necks. Thankfully, nobody has died on the ice from that or off the ice because of that, because of the quick action of some trainers and doctors. But there have
Sure.
been plenty of scary incidents, and a lot of people, those kind of things are freak accidents. The way that the game is played in terms of heavy hitting and hits to the head, those aren't freak accidents. Those have been part of the game for a long time. There are rule changes now that are trying to take those out of the game, but eliminating concussions, we know that concussions are we all are aware of the serious harm that those can do. Hockey's a game that features a lot of them, unfortunately. So there's been a lot of movement to try to take away hits from the game that target the head and neck area, but it's still not perfect. And people's and fighting is part of that too. When you're getting punched
Yeah.
in the head. I mean, that's blunt trauma to the head. it's a dangerous game for sure, and that's the downside. It's one of the bigger downsides to it.
Sure.
And yeah, that's all there really is to say on that.
Now, that's also that's I think a general maybe unfair view of a lot of American sports is, especially with hockey and American football, is just like the level of violence inherent in the game is higher than what we're used to in the UK. Obviously, we have hockey. Sorry, we have rugby. Um, but yeah, I think we're used to a far more not sanitized sort of sport dynamic with relation to violence. But I think that's one of the shocking things, and also kind of one of the things that makes it so compelling. That like element of danger, not to celebrate it, but that the fact that it's so physical is certainly like one of the things that I admire about hockey.
Yeah.
However, that was an upsetting 8 or so minutes, Adam. Just bathe me in what you
I
think
know how
that
to
sort of
I know how to
the
win
give
over an
me
audience, huh?
so let me do the heavy lifting for winning the audience. Where is the beauty in the game? Obviously, I said like it's an elegant game to watch, but I see what you've told me about ice hockey is it's an amazing sport for the sentimentals. It's a sport with incredible sort of gestures. Big events. What would somebody who's never seen or interacted with hockey know that shows like the heart and the soul of the sport.
Yeah. Yeah, it is hockey is a beautiful, it is an elegant game, and some of it is just because you get to watch the movement of these players. I mean, these skaters are as good as good in a lot of senses as figure skaters that you see. Maybe not quite as technically strong at skating, but they're doing something else entirely athletic. And watching, how I was mentioning forward lines before, how you have three players on
Yes.
the ice that are forwards at the same time, a center and then two wings. Watching a forward line that has great chemistry and is in sync together,
Yeah.
it's like watching the best Spanish national teams
Uh-huh.
of their eras, where they just know where each of them are on the ice at all
Yeah.
times. If you go back and watch highlights of the Detroit Red Wings, I invite all of our viewers and listeners to watch along with Harry. But 97 ish era Red Wings had some of the most beautiful. Some of the most beautiful play of all time because of that same thing that I'm talking about. Like if you like watching soccer and people just like passing one touch, one touch, one touch, I know exactly where you are.
Yeah.
Build up, goal. That's basically what watching some of those Red Wings teams are. Because funny
Sure.
enough, of the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union was toward the tail end of it, you started to see some players come over and play in the NHL because obviously of all the political tensions and everything. Soviet players weren't allowed to come over and play in the NHL.
Sure.
But once they did, uh, the the Detroit Red Wings basically scooped up like five of them. They called them the Russian Five,
Sure.
and they put them all on the ice: two defensemen, three forwards. And whenever they were all on the ice together, oh my goodness, it was the most beautiful brand of hockey ever. Just
Wicked.
goal, incredible. Anyway, hard to describe without something so visual, without having the
Sure.
visual up for us to watch. But we don't have rights to NHL footage, unfortunately. The other thing about hockey that's so pretty is so lovely is just is I would say two other things: the visual, just objective, like cool visuals of the game. There is something called an ODR, or an outdoor rink. If you are somebody who's grown
Sure.
up in Canada, you grew up playing kind of like you go out and play, five-a-side football in your neighborhood and in the UK.
Yeah.
these people in the winter, they're out playing 3-on-3 on an outdoor rink. On a goalie, or maybe there's no goalie, but just out
That's
in the
so
middle of a
cool.
frozen lake. It's so cool. It is my
That's
dream
so
to like be able
cool.
to do that one day, because it's so much fun. So much so that the NHL actually like recognized, like, hey, this is a big part of the sport's heritage. I mean, it people started playing it outdoors. Why don't we play games outdoors? So the
Cool.
NHL started playing a bunch of different series. We were talking about this a little bit before we came on air, but they play a few different series and a few different games kind of throughout the year, special event games. We're about to have one here actually on New Year's Eve between the Chicago Blackhawks and the St. Louis Blues. That's called the Winter Classic. Is the biggest one, and they go to a football stadium or a baseball stadium and they play outside, and sometimes it snows and it's 10 degrees
Oh,
outside, Fahrenheit, and it's these players are giddy for it because this is what so many of them grew up playing on. So
cool.
that part of it's beautiful. A lot of players embrace making some style choices, having some like cool colored skate laces, or things like
Sure.
that. And then I would also say the sportsmanship element of it too, when you get to the playoffs. We haven't even touched playoff hockey yet, but it's the most incredible thing. The atmospheres are so lively. You get to play for the greatest trophy in all of sports. I'm sorry, it's not the Ashes, it's the Stanley Cup. It is. It's
Ooh,
it. Sorry. We can have a debate over it, but sorry, it just
we
is.
will.
The Stanley Cup. It's huge silver cup that has stayed the same for 100 years pretty much. It's the same trophy. It's been modified a few times, but it's the same trophy. You get your name etched on it if you win it. You get your team's name, everything. It's unbelievable. But at the end of every playoff round, all the players get in the line and shake hands. Stuff like that's beautiful. I love it.
Sure.
I'm gushing about it. I'm probably not making as much sense as I want to be making, but yeah, this is. I could go on and on. Clearly,
I I I think it's a real shame that maybe in other parts of Europe, as you said, it's bigger in Scandinavia. There's far more accessibility to this. I have I will be returning to my local ice hockey team. We've got a couple of dates in with me and my friends who I'm just gonna like subject it to them as well because it was such a fun time. But yeah, it's a real shame that we don't have I like it's so much less visible here in the UK. So yeah, I'd follow Adam's suggestion. Please go and like seek out like hockey live, definitely. If not, hit it up on YouTube. It is really good. Finish this video first, but yeah, I'll be watching the '97 Detroit team for sure.
yes.
Amazing. Do you have any closing, compelling talking points about hockey before we move on?
I do. I have one last thing. This jersey that I'm wearing is actually the jersey from the final year, actually, of his time in Pittsburgh, but of Jaromir Jagr, who is not only one of the greatest players of all time, but absolutely the greatest European player of all time. Jaromir Jagr is the second
Yes.
leading goal scorer ever. He has more than 1,900 points. I think it's 1,921. I just put away the list. But he is an absolute legend. He came into the sport when he was 18 years old. He is playing his final
Wow.
professional season. Now, granted, he's been out of the NHL for about 6, 7 years at this point, but he's playing his final professional season over in his native Czech Republic this year, and he's 52 years old. So he has been playing professional
52.
hockey.
Wow.
Yes, he has been playing
He's
professional hockey for more than 30 years of his life.
that's longer than you and I have been alive.
Yeah,
God.
he
Wow. For
unbelievable,
our
unbelievable player.
For our audio only listeners, Adam's jersey is an incredible. It's a striking black. Obviously, it's completely oversized because they've got to get so many pads under. But it's a lovely black jersey with an enormous penguin on the front with gold and white accents. It's probably one of the coldest kits I've ever seen. Jerseys, sorry, I've ever seen from any team. Just one last question about your kit. It's got a massive C on the front. What does that mean?
That is for the captain. So instead of having an
Cool.
armband like you do in soccer, in the NHL or in hockey they stitch a big C onto your chest, usually on your just above kind of your left shoulder.
Does does being a captain mean the same sort of thing? Do you have like that sort of leadership responsibility, even though you're trading on and off the rink so much?
Big leadership responsibilities. Technically, you're the only player who's allowed to. This is FUD. I mean, this is not fully enforced this way, but technically, you're the only player allowed to talk to the referees.
Sure.
So yeah, being a captain is a lot. Also, one of the other really cool things about being a captain is when your team wins the Stanley Cup, you're the first one that gets to hoist it. So you go up with the commissioner, take a
That's
picture,
cool.
you hold the cup, you take it, and you skate around with it.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty
Yeah,
nice.
that's it.
Oh,
Hockey is incredible. Hockey is for everyone. It has. I meant to dive more into this. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I don't want to completely go without saying it. Hockey has big time inclusivity issues. It is a sport like a lot of sports that is when you're a kid. It is a very expensive sport to play. So
sure.
unless you have rich parents or people who are willing to finance you playing the game, it is really hard to get in without having a lot of resources. A lot of diversity issues within the game. The amount of players of color in the league are. I actually don't know the statistics off the top of my head because they people go up and down so much, but it's less than
Sure.
10. I can tell you that.
Wow.
It's a real problem. There's serious problems of in the men's game certainly of abuse. Do some research on the Hockey Canada scandal. I'm not an expert on it enough to talk about it too much, but sexual assault is at the center of it, and yeah, it's got a lot of problems, kind of culturally. That certainly there's good people that are trying to make it a more inclusive place, but that is a big reality. So again, I feel like
Sure.
I often leave us on downers, but that's a very real piece of it. I actually one last thing, and I promise we'll move on.
It's fine.
This is a bit of a high point. We just started the second year of the PWHL, which is the
Yes,
Professional Women's
I
Hockey
was
League.
just about to say yes.
Yes, it is
Go for it.
high octane because they have gotten all of the best women's players in North America into the same league. There were a lot of problems with getting the professional women's hockey into one cohesive league. Finally, they did. Last year, this is the first year that they're playing it actually with team brands and team names. There's 3 in America, 3 in Canada.
Sick.
It's a blast. I desperately want to go to a game. Women's hockey is it. It is so much fun to watch. So
Wicked.
that's my other pitch. Okay.
Amazing.
Yes. I'm done. I promise.
All right, cool. Okay. What a compelling journey through hockey. Yet again, like our baseball episode, a couple of episodes back, I feel so like energized and magnetized, like magnetically drawn to something that I know so little about. You are so good at you are so good at articulating that. Something else Adam is very good at is sport
Incredible.
math. Alas, this time it's my go. So I've got my pen and my piece of paper. I will make this far faster than the last one, where I dawdled over the geography of my own great nation for what felt like 7 years. So I
Well,
promise I'll keep this to a snappy.
thankfully, thankfully, I don't have any sort of geography questions for you this time. This one should be a little bit more straightforward. So I'll keep this brief. Harry, your sport math challenge is simple addition followed by simple subtraction. We just have to figure out what the numbers are. So
Okay.
your first number, we're gonna do a number plus a number minus a number. I need you to take the number of titles, Premier League titles that Manchester United have. I need you to take that number plus the number of points that Manchester City got in its record-breaking title run in 2017-18. So I need the number of titles plus the number of points City got in 17-18. And then I need you to subtract that number by the jersey number of the player with the highest active free kick scorer in the Premier League. So the player who's in the Premier League that has the most direct free kick goals in the entire league.
Great. Okay. It's all football, which is in my wheelhouse. Can I have a? Do I get any sort of
That's the
leeway?
hope.
Can I? Is there any? Is there any plus or
I will give
minus
you
buffer?
if you get it within. I was thinking about this as we were doing because I was like, this is very exact. I will give it to you if you get it within let's say 7, one way or the other.
Within 7. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Manchester United Premier League titles won. Um, and it's Premier League, yeah, not top flight. It's since the Premier League started in the
Yes.
90s.
Since
I
the yeah.
think I think that number is 13. I remember
Okay.
Ferguson's 13th being a really important one. So I will sit on 13 because if it's anything else, I just don't know it. But 13 is what strikes me immediately. The Man City, remind me the season for Man City's record points haul.
17-18. 17-18. Your hint is that it's the most points ever scored in the Premier League.
Yeah, I think they were. Uh, they were Centurions. They made a massive thing about them being Centurions, but was that because they scored 100 goals, or was that because they breached 100 points? For some reason, I keep getting stuck on the fact that I think they got 101 points that season. It could have been 100. It might have been. For some reason, I think it's 101. And then I have to subtract
Okay.
the jersey number of the player with the most, the active player with the most free kicks. Right? Is that the?
Yeah. Which I realize that one is just evil.
Well, no. I think the active Premier League player with the most free kicks is James Ward-Prowse, who plays for Nottingham Forest, and I think he's always worn the number 8, but he's only just moved. So does he have the number 8 at Forest? I'm pretty confident he's the current player with the most free kick goals. If there's somebody else, I'll be amazed, or I'm being really stupid. Um, because he's so good at them. All right, so if I'm just gonna have to swallow my medicine if I'm wrong. I'm gonna say 13 plus 101. minus 8, which I've done on the calculator, but I could have done in my head. God, am I okay if
Don't blame me.
am I okay if I am I okay if I get this wrong? Yeah, I'm gonna 106 is my answer. Um, if I'm
Okay.
wrong, this will be interesting to like pace through it.
So you are incorrect. You are
Okay.
incorrect by more than 7, unfortunately. But you
Oh
were
my God.
so close. You were so close, Harry. You're so
Is
close.
it is it
So the
is it the
the
jersey
United
number?
titles, it is the jersey number. It
Oh,
is the
okay,
jersey
go on.
number.
Go on. Oh,
So Manchester United
beans.
titles is 13. You had that spot on, my friend. You should
Yep,
have gone with your first instinct on City. You should have gone with your first instinct on City. It was exactly 100 points.
sure.
So they were Centurions, but 100 points exactly. And James Ward-Prowse's number is 18.
Oh. So I was one out with the points for City, so I'd gone one over what I needed to be, and then I was 10 under what I needed to come down by. That's so frustrating.
So correct.
'Cause
So you're like, in terms of the win loss percentage, this didn't
yeah,
do you any favors. But in terms of
no,
like
no,
the raw ball knowledge, you're doing great.
yes, yeah. I think yeah, this question definitely played far more into my strengths. Knowing which cities are east of Leicester or whatever it was a chat was tough. But yeah, knowing the Centurions, knowing the 13, and here's the thing: James Ward-Prowse wears the number 18 because number 8, I'm sure, is taken at Forest. Um, I
Probably.
think he's at Forest. Yeah, so like even the
He is
fact
a
that
Forest.
he's
You're right about that.
chosen 18. So yeah, thank you. I think
I
my ball knowledge is recovered slightly.
I think I think your conscience. I think you can live with a pretty clear conscience right now. With those
And
answers.
I want to be
Well,
clear.
another episode in the books. Oh,
Yeah. No, I just want to be clear. That was a very good sports math question.
okay.
No, absolutely
That's all that
no,
matters. I'm
no
not looking
complaints.
for. Yeah, I'm not
That's
looking
yeah,
for.
that's
That's all I'm looking for. I just want you to. I just want you to be satisfied with the questions.
it was good. It was
Actually, and
challenging,
and
and
for any
I'm
of our
happy.
listeners out there, would yeah, for any of our listeners out there, if you have a, I don't know how we would do this. Maybe it's a DM situation to either of us individually, but like if you have an idea for a sports math question or some sort of trivia bit, we're all ears. So these are fun for us to
Yes.
come up with. Do not get me wrong, and I think we've come
That's
up
a
with some great ones, but definitely want some community engagement on
That's a
that if we can.
that is a great idea. A lot of the people who are listening to this probably know us personally. It's very early doors. We are also on TikTok briefly, so if you want to DM us over there, sure thing. If you want to leave a comment on the YouTube, I'll just assume that one of us will read it before the other, and we'll tell them not to look. So
Yeah.
yeah, that is where you can catch us. Adam has got us on Spotify, on YouTube, and I'm just finishing up the TikTok before I move all of our short form stuff over to YouTube Shorts as well. I think that's a. Do you want to come in?
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah. To be clear, we're gonna still be on TikTok as long as we can. We're
Yes,
not leaving TikTok.
yes. But yeah, we'll diversify where we are. That was a fantastic episode. I've really enjoyed it. I feel far more up to speed with the sport that I should have been enjoying this whole time. So unless you've got anything else, Adam, it's a massive thank you, and we'll catch you probably in the new year now.
Probably in the new year at this point. Yeah, we this is I know we gave a happy holiday message at the end of the last episode because we weren't entirely sure we were going to record one more before the end of the year. But yes, hope everybody has a lovely holiday, lovely new year, and we'll see you on the other side.